Greetings, this video is about making grain spawn. I'm about to make about 47 pounds of spawn wet. I'm going to start with 30 pounds dry. I'm going to be using 2 parts of oats, 1 part Milo, which is also called sorghum. The reason why I use a mixture of the 2 is because it gives you more density. The Milo is more weight per volume. Like if I filled this bucket up to the top, it would say weigh 30 pounds. This one would weigh maybe, 22 pounds or something like that. So the sorghum is more dense, and on top of that, there's more inoculation points in a given weight amount or volume amount. So, there's maybe 20 seeds right there, and then in a similar amount in my hand would be like, I don't know, like 10 seeds or 12 seeds. So you get more inoculation points. Oats, rye, or wheat are all about the same with the soak time. They all get soaked for 24 hours. Sorghum by itself is going to take like anywhere from 10 to maybe 12 hours, depending on your temperature too. So if you're soaking at 55, 60 degrees in your grow room or wherever, not a heated area, then it's gonna be a longer soak. Whereas if it's the summertime in an area that, like right now I'm at almost 80 degrees in here, it'll soak a little bit shorter. So what I'll go ahead and do is, this is how I soak. I have that's where I keep my soaking stuff, and I have 2 buckets with holes in them, and these were old grow buckets that I used to use, and then I drilled additional holes in the bottom, and then I line it with a bucket paint strainer. And then I put some heavy-duty rubber bands around it because the elastic kind of loses its grip after a while. So I have 2 of those and then 2 regular just buckets. And here's my other one. And I don't even really bother cleaning these. Like I'll just rinse them, not even, just dump them out, because it's all going to get sterilized anyways in the end. So I'll take the bucket, put it on my scale, zero it out. And then here's my recipe. I'll scratch different numbers up here for all different types of jars, how much weight I need, so that way I don't have waste. So I'm going to do, it's going to be 20 oats, 10 Milo for the whole batch. So each bucket is going to get half that. So it's going to be 10 oats and then 5 of the Milo. Zero it again. Zero. And then 5 of the Milo. Alright, so now I have that. I'm going to put it inside of a whole bucket. And then same thing with the other one. And I actually already have, this one's already, I had some that I pre-mixed already, so. Alright, so there we go. I got these 2 buckets filled with grain. Now I'm going to go over and grab my hose and fill them up. And then I have a marking on this. There, you can see there's a little line right there. That just tells me pretty much where this is, where it's going to overflow at. I'm sorry, where the 2 buckets meet. So I fill up to that line and then stop, because anymore it's going to flow out of the bottom bucket. That's pretty much it. I don't bother pulling out too much wood, except for this rock. I don't bother usually pulling out too much stuff. I'll just if there's floaters, let them be. If I have really dirty stuff, I might consider it, but this isn't too bad. Usually if you buy good feed grain, you don't have to pull out floaters. With wild bird seed, you might have to rinse it once or twice. One of the reasons is for clumping. If you have a lot of junk in there, when you cook it, it's going to clump your grain together. So that's why I recommend getting some cleaned oats for food, for feed. And I also get the sorghum for feed. So I'm pretty much just going to fill it up now and Right now it's Wednesday night, and Thursday night I'm going to come home and I'm going to drain it out and load it up, and I'll continue from there. Alright, so this is a day later. These have soaked, and you can see they kind of risen up a little bit. The water level's barely even getting these saturated, but that's okay, they're wet. So this is what I actually use for filling up quart jars. It's a like bullet blender thing, and it's actually like the perfect amount when I level it out for filling up quart jars on the funnel here. And I just store them in there for when they're not in use. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to let it drain out, so pull it out slowly. It's kind of heavy, it's about 30 pounds, 40 pounds almost, fully wet. And then I'm going to tilt it on top of the bucket like that and let it drain for just a couple minutes, not even while I get everything else ready. Let me drain for a little bit. I have this big tote. The reason why I use a tote is because this scooper that I use for measuring is too big to really get in here and get a good scoop. So I'm going to dump those out once they're fully drained into here. And then what I do is I have some 3/4 inch spacers that I put down. Here they are. So these are the 3/4 inch spacers that I use. And I find that 3/4 of an inch is just enough for my setup. You definitely want to start on the high end with a little bit of extra water, and then slowly reduce your volume until you got the right amount. And I'm going to fill it up right to the bottom of the grate. And I've noticed that if you fill it up, say even 1/4 inch above the grate, the bags take up so much space that it'll go all the way up almost to the filter patch. Alright, so I'm going to take these buckets and dump them out. They've been draining for about 3 minutes, 4 minutes now. Alright, and I'm going to take my measuring pail and mix up a little bit. Making sure that all the millet and the wheat is evenly distributed. And I'm going to take my bags, and these are unicorn bags. They're what are they? 5x4x19, 2.2 mil, 5 micron, I believe. And this is just a bucket with a smaller bucket, and I kind of cut it and tapered it. A lot easier and better is just a reducer for HVAC. I'm going to weigh this to see how much it weighs. I'm shooting for 5 1/4 pounds. It's a little heavy. So I got the next bucket I'm not going to fill up as much. The next measuring bucket is not going to be filled up as much. And the reason why I'm measuring it is because if I don't, the last bag is either I won't have enough, or I'm going to have too much grain left over. So I'm shooting for somewhere between 5.5 and 5.3-ish kind of ish, somewhere around there. So I'm just going to do one layer for demonstration purposes. So that's 3 bags. I'm going to put 9 bags in here total, but I'm just going to do the 3 bags for this demonstration. So I'm going to take the bag and I'm going to fold it on the gusseting just like I do for my other bags. Make sure the gusseting has no gunk in it and it's nice and the crease is nice. Filter face up, so that way when it's doing the cool down it can hopefully seal along here just on its own, and it'll suck in through the filter. But I'm going to actually cool down in front of the HEPA filter anyways. I'm just going to fold it in like that, and then it gets placed into the pressure cooker like that. Alright, so here's the last bag being loaded. As you can see, I alternated the stacking, so the first row is like that, the next row is offset, the third row is going to be offset again. So what happens is that makes it to where the steam has to kind of channel its way through. I don't use any spacers, I don't use any kind of anything besides just bags folded properly and put in the pressure cooker. So from here, I do put a plate on top, but that's just to protect it from blowing up the pressure cooker. Very important safety feature. If you do not put something on top like this, it'll plug your pressure hole, it'll plug your overpressure hole, it'll plug your rocker, and then you have a bomb. So you don't want to do that. Always put some kind of something. I actually like to use just that guy on top. And so what's going to happen is I'm going to run it. I got my PID up here, digitally controlled with temperature steps and all that kind of stuff. It's called the Auburn's Ramp Soak PID. It'll run, bring it up to pressure cook temperature, hold it there for 200 minutes, and then I'll let it cool down for its own for a while. And then once it's down to near 0 psi, lately I just let it sit like this with no flow hood, and I'll let it be able to vacuum. This actually holds a seal for the most part. And then what I'll do is the next day, the next morning, I'll turn the flow hood and release all the pressure, let it sit there for a couple minutes, and then I'll put it back on. And depending on when I'm going to inoculate, if I'm going to inoculate sooner, I'll unload. So I'm gonna go ahead and get this thing locked down, get it running, and then we'll check in tomorrow, and I'll show you the next step of the process. All right, so here I am unloading the bags. This is 2 days later. It's actually cooled down enough to where I don't even have to really stack them out, but I'll just demonstrate how I would stack them if I was gonna be unloading while they're hot. And then I let them sit like this for about a couple hours, and it would cool down further. So you can see I left a little bit of space between each one. All right, so here we are. I'm about to inoculate these 9 bags with these 3 bags. What I have here is MSL 3015, and then I put a 1 on the end, designating this is a first generation from agar, from my culture, my master culture. Same thing here, Elm 1, Elm oyster. It's a false Elm oyster. It's actually just a white oyster mushroom. I made a pretty interesting one, abalone mushroom. I'm growing this specifically for one of my chefs, and they're pretty cool. You can actually see, I don't know if you can see little black, there's actually little heads and little pins in there. Almost as soon as they hit 100%, they start to pin. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my Lysol. These bags have been sitting out. This one's been sitting in the garage. These have been sitting in my pantry, and I'll spray them down really well to knock off any dust and whatever, because I'm going to be pouring from this into my bags, so I don't want any germs or mold or whatever dust to go from one bag to the next. So what I'll do is I'll bust these up, get all the big chunks that I can. So I'm going to go ahead and do all my spawn bags, seal them all up, and then I'm going to move on to my sawdust bags, and I'm going to inoculate about 40 bags with these 3 bags. Typically I only do 2 bags per 40, about a quarter pound per bag. These are 5-pound bags, a little bit bigger than 5-pound bags. So yeah, we'll go from there. So here I got the shrunk down bag, and you can see how I sealed it, and then I cut it to where it has a little opening right there. All right, and I keep that closer to the flow hood, that way there's no particles that are going in there. I'm going to go ahead and open up one of the bags. And it only takes a little bit. Make sure you don't touch the inside of the bag. Bring it over to the impulse sealer. Seal it. actually forgot on the last bag, you want to introduce a little bit of oxygen, not oxygen, but just air volume into there. That way shaking is easier. Seal it, and then go ahead and mix it up. Give it a pressure test. Actually, it looks like this one might not be good. Let me see. No, that's good. Go ahead and shake it up. Alright, then mark the culture. It should be 3015. So 3015, and this will be generation 2. And then same thing with this one. Go ahead and shake. So that's pretty much the gist of getting the spawn prepped. I went from the soak, the blend of the different grains, pressure cook it, how I loaded it, cool down, inoculation. From here, I'll just put it up on a rack inside my house. One important thing is make sure that the bags are not all stacked up against each other, because what'll happen is it'll make a lot of heat, and then it might get thermally like kind of overload to where the core temperature is so hot that it delays the growth. That's how I make the spawn bags. I make once a month I'll make 9 bags. And that's enough to make almost 200 spawn, not spawn, but 200 sawdust bags with all that spawn. So here we are 2 days later after the last video, and you can see the bags are already starting to colonize. You can also note how the sorghum is not exploded, nice and wet, but not too wet, no moisture at the bottom of the bags. These should be, some of them might spawn a little bit heavier with intentions of using them with a batch that's out back right now, sterilizing in the 55-gallon drum sterilizer. So that'll probably be like this one and this one. Those should be done in maybe like 3 days, probably by Friday. They'll be done. Today's Tuesday. That last video that I made was on Sunday. And then other ones that are lagging behind, like this one is the abalone mushroom. Just taking a little bit slower to respond. The 3015 Amisil is really fast to respond, as you can see. And then here's the elm oyster, a little bit behind. But these are not a priority. These are kind of just variety. I like to have variety when I have a box for chefs. You know, they like to not just get the same thing over and over. And for the farmer's market, having the variety helps as well. Alright, so I hope you liked that video. That's actually an old video of mine about 4 years ago. A lot of the information is still valid and a good technique. I do use other methods now. I don't do the soak method anymore. It still works fine, but I prefer to do dry bagging where I'm measuring out the grains and measuring out the water. And pretty soon I believe I'll be doing batch mixing, because I'll be doing a larger volume and it's a little bit quicker. And batch mixing is just in a cement mixer or a batch mixer, you would mix your grain, mix your water, a little bit of sawdust to help hydrate it in, to mix it in, and then bag out. So yeah, hopefully that video helps you out with the techniques involved with getting started making your own spawn. And if you all need spawn bags, myersmushrooms.com. I have them available there. And make sure you check out my Patreon page, patreon.com/myersmushrooms, and also check out kit.co. So that's the latest thing, and I'll have another video about this, but kit.com is now kit.co. So kit.co/myersmushrooms for all the mushroom equipment, including the sterilizer you saw and the hot plate that I recommend to run underneath it, the PID build, all that other kind of stuff to get your operation up and running and nice and automated. So alright, have a good one, hope you liked it, and keep on mushrooming. Take it easy.